Welcome everyone to our fifth episode of the podcast Tuesdays Against Execution. I am Antonietta Elia, professor and senior legal advisor. So today I have a great privilege, which is to have our guest, Miss Judith Armatta, who is a leading expert and is a woman. So from my point of view, is an additional privilege to have her here because of her extensive expertise on international criminal law and accountability for gross human rights violation. Most important among the work she have done with many international organizations, she followed the Milosevic trial and for crimes against humanity and genocide in Bosnia. So before the ICTY, so the International Tribunal for the crime committed in the former Yugoslavia. So, and one of the written contribution is her the war crimes, her book over on the war crimes trial. And so today it's my privilege to have her. And before to give her the microphone, I would like today to extend my thoughts to Sahed Bagheri, one of the founder of the movement, who is still in the worst possible conditions and in isolation. So my thoughts are with him today. So, Madam, thank you to join us today. I would like to start today from one aspect, from a general perspective, before to enter into the specificity of the trial against Milosevic. So the idea is to have your views on what international criminal system is missing in relation to the crimes ongoing in Iran.
There may be more than one, yes. But I think that there needs to be broader understanding of the international law system and who has power in it and how you can affect it. I think that the general public, certainly in my country, the United States, is not aware of most of it. The academics, yes, but not the general public. And that means that people don't necessarily see it as something that's important to do, to hold people accountable. And I think that there has been so much hope as a result of the establishment of the International Criminal Court, a permanent court, and people are disappointed. It's there and it's being used. Some of the problems, of course, are the politics, and politics play such an incredibly heavy role in limiting international law and accountability. It certainly did in the ICTY, and I think it does even more with the ICC. On the other hand, the ICTY was a precursor to a whole number of regional and local courts, the Rwanda court, the Cambodia court, all of those. So there is an increasing view that there needs to be accountability, and a movement towards it. At the same time, there's a worldwide movement towards authoritarianism, and those things are also, fighting each other. So the more that there's a movement towards justice, but there's also this incredible movement towards authoritarian ruling that doesn't respond to people and what their needs and wants are, and certainly doesn't respond to the victims of these crimes.
So thank you very much for mentioning that. 2 points. The first one, you mentioned the fact that the general public, especially in the United States, but unfortunately not only in the United States, practically everywhere, is not aware of how international legal order is functioning or not functioning. But in the United States, do you think is also due to the fact that it is a sort of lack in the educational curriculum? Because I'm not sure if I'm right, but in my experience in the United States, the international law related courses and seminars curriculum are always related not just in the majority of cases to law schools, but politics schools. So, or government schools. It's like international law is not an external law, but a question of law of land, right? So this is the first point. I'm not sure if it's right, but in the case, maybe education also at higher level can be useful to diffuse a culture of international rule of law. And the second point is about the reference, and thank you to make such a reference to the current situation and the clash of the movement searching for justice and in some way the majority of situation of refraining such movement from an authoritarian practically everywhere, not only United States. And if I can say, we started before United States in Europe with such movement, and we are going ahead. You see, for example, in the European Union level, we have a kind of block, even inside the European Union institutions. So, but the point maybe, and I know what you think, in the early 90s, when we created the ICTY, the Cambodia tribunal, and the Sierra Leone, and so on, the mixed tribunal too, maybe it was the time of the request for accountability and the shock towards such kind of brutal inhumanity was higher. Do you think now there is a kind of, even in the public opinion, habit, let me use that term, towards crimes against humanity and serious international human rights violations?
Yes, I do. I think that's an excellent observation. That's the downside of being able to publicize things and publicize what's going on in different countries, and that people become inured to it. It doesn't shock them the same way as, say, the first photographs of the concentration camps in Bosnia did. It looked like the Holocaust. It looked like that's what was happening again. And so I think that shocked people. And also, it dominated for a while. It had a way of being able to be seen in the news. Now everything gets mushed, and what's happening. I'm shocked at how little is publicized about what's happening in Iran. And we have then a president here in the United States who is, he doesn't see things in human rights terms. That isn't relevant to him. It's transactional. And so that's frightening to me. When Iran is also in a place where there might be some influence, and it wouldn't be, at least the United States, maybe Europe, but not the United States, probably will not be able to do anything about that, to use that opportunity.
Thank you to make that reference, to mention that. It is true that the situation is really obscure in some way, and if I understand, the point is that if even United States in front of human rights is going down or is mistreating human rights, on the other side, public opinion outside the United States, looking at the US, say, okay, it is not so relevant, is it? So, I mean, if they do it, so if they also do it, it means that it is a kind of normality, and this is a tragedy, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's why we are here today, to fight against this diffusion of a public opinion. And this is interesting because very recently, here in the European side, we had a series of statistics, and it seems that a very high percent of young people among 18 years old and 25, 25th, they see an authoritarian regime not so bad in their respective country, like Italy, for example, even in Spain, where I'm based. But they would like to have an authoritarian regime with some conditions. So you see that the problem is a kind of ignorance about what authoritarian regime is in outside the country, like Iran, is under such kind of brutal regime. So the point is that young people maybe are not so educated or have a clear idea of what means to have limitation of rights, limitation or abuse of rights, better said, in their country, in their respective country. So, and do you think that there is any kind of possibility, despite this situation so difficult nowadays, when it seems that politics prevails over law, over rule of law, international politics, do you think that there is any possibility to have a kind of international mechanism, reinforced international mechanism, because we have special procedures, for example, of the United Nations working on Iran, on the situation of human rights in Iran. But do you think there is any kind of possibility in the near future to have a special tribunal or a mixed tribunal, or even any kind of intervention by the International Criminal Court against Iran ex officio?
I don't know how to predict this, but it would be it's encouraging that UN bodies are involved and have spoken out and have done reports, and also that non-governmental organizations have, like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, and the organizations that Iran has given birth to. I see it. I don't know about. I would like there to be more knowledge about that and focus on it broadly. And it may have to come initially from the United Nations. It would be also another possibility would be for a state to bring either an individual before the ICC or Iran before the ICJ, the International Criminal Court, or International Court. And I'm surprised that hasn't happened, because there is a lot of objections by people who are known to be favor human rights in other countries, generally in Europe. I don't exclude Canada or Australia necessarily, though I don't know their politics very well. But I don't know. I think it's going to have to start there. The other thing that I've seen that encourages me about young people is, and this happens in Serbia, where they've been since November, they've been in the streets. The students have been, and they bring some of the other of the population with them. That happened before, and then they were quiet for a while. I guess sort of relying on the fact that they weren't going to have an authoritarian government, and it's turned out that way, that they do have, even though they thought they overturned it. So that encourages me about young people. Now they're focused on what's going on in their country, and so there's a need for somehow to get Iran and what's happening in Iran front and center, so that people understand that, which is very difficult these days because of what's going on in Gaza and what's going on in Ukraine. That it sort of dominates the news, and I'm not sure how to get. I'm not sure how to get that before people. I think that I'm like, I don't know where the United Nations women's groups are with this, because this seems like something that they could get behind and help push. It's a very tricky situation, but I think the work that you all have been doing is really getting it out there. It's the beginning of that, and it maybe you never know what the time is for things, why things happen at a certain time, and what precipitates that. But I'm just kind of, I'm thinking that it's probably not going to come from the grassroots, though Iran and the people who are working in Iran are certainly grassroots and more. But when you're thinking about a broader movement and a broader awareness of what's happening in Iran. I think that's going to have to come from when a state or more states step forward and file complaints with the ICC or the ICJ.
Yeah, it seems to me, I don't know what you're saying, it seems to me that in some way certain members of the international community, certain states are more interested into the nuclear development politics or nuclear development doesn't and in some way they have a kind of refrain to pay attention to the situation of human rights inside Iran, because we should always take into account that in authoritarian regime, who pay the price is the people of that state, like in the case of Iran and everywhere. And so you mentioned, I thank you very much to mention the reference to young people, and because I just read a post, a very sad post by a young boy, young employee of the employee of the European Commission in Brussels. He was at the fourth year of work for political affairs. I don't remember what kind of general directorate, but she recently published just 2 days ago a post, a very long post, and I used to read, especially posts of young people. Who say that the point is that there are so many aged chief of state, like in the case of the United States, like in the case of other countries. So they are unable, because of age, to understand the progress of the society. And he was particularly afraid about the fact that he spent several years to study and learn about international law, human rights standards, and so on. And he was saying, he see that the situation is, the reality is totally in the opposite in relation to what he studied. So it's a very young boy. So he could just started the international career, and this give me the idea that many new generation, many people from new generation don't understand that if we want a good world, a better world, it requires a big effort, now more than ever. So I replied to that guy and I salute him, and I told him that we cannot give up like people of Iran. When crises are like people of Iran, and like some part of United States too. The hope we have on this side of the Atlantic Ocean is in people of United States fighting against injustice too. So we must underline, even in crisis, even in the worst period for the entire world, that there is always a hope, a little light, who is always given the way to the rest of the world. So I would like to ask you what elements, in your opinion, we must retain from the Milosevic trial. So what we learned, or we should learn from such trial.
One of the things that strikes me so much, and there were a number of problems with that trial, not least of which was Milosevic defending himself and it not completing, but was people having a chance to confront him. And it meant so much to them. And that's, people that, lost their families, people that witnessed horrible things, but also soldiers who were forced into doing horrible things. It impacted their lives. I mean, these were 19-year-old, 20-year-old young men, and having to shoot a baby, that I remember one young soldier talking, he asked the prosecutor if he couldn't testify, and he confronted Milosevic. And that was very brave. And I think it probably saved his life. But I think that was that's one thing that was very important about the Milosevic trial. The other thing is that it did sit down, it helped establish international law and what is required to establish crimes against humanity. And so it's also, it's out there for people to say, gee, if I do ABC. And the other thing is that the leaders are responsible, and they don't have to pick up a gun. They don't have to hang somebody. They are responsible for either ordering it, for having power to stop it and not stopping it. And that was it wasn't just established in the Milosevic trial. It is a principle of law now, but it was in trials of the other leaders in the former Yugoslavia who ordered that. The heads of the army, the heads of Republika Srpska, they were held responsible. And Karadzic, who was the head of Republika Srpska, serving a life sentence. So I think that's another thing that's very important. And people have a tendency to do all or nothing. The trial was worthless, or, it was great. And that's not life, and that's certainly wasn't true for the trial. It had, there were a number of things that were positive about it and a number of things that weren't, but it also created a record. And that record has been well established, and it's in a library in, I think, Croatia. And Mirko Klarin, who was one of the journalists who was also one of the initiators of the tribunal, saw that record was archived and available for people. And so these, like the wars in the former Yugoslavia, they're not over, and they take a long, long time. And I think, when this is from maybe not something we learned from the trial, but we learn in retrospect, there was hope after these leaders were convicted, because there were 90 people convicted by the ICTY. And the government turned over. It became more democratic, but for a short period of time, because the people who want power in a different way came back. They held on to that. Life goes on, because now the students are in the streets saying, we don't want you. So there's that circle. But I think that the trial itself, the fact that 90 people on the highest levels had to serve time, were convicted, and had to serve mostly very serious time. I think that's something that other people, leaders who are doing bad things, can see.
Yeah. So thank you very much for this point. And what is interesting also to me is the reference you did to the soldiers having executed orders at the under Milosevic. And so this put me this just obliged me to ask you and to myself, and also extensively to such member of authorities and agents in place to refuse an order. Because the point is that we cannot, this is the new side of international criminal law. We cannot say, I just executed an order.
That's right.
Like in the Nuremberg tribunal. So a soldier, who said, okay, I received the order to go ahead with the massacre, I can say no. But the price to be paid for such kind of refuse the order is possibly the life. So, but I would like to use, thank you to mention that, because this is a call also to, because after all, the member of an army, the member of the police, the agents of executing order of the regime, they are people after all. So they have the ability to decide and to make a choice to see that this is wrong, this is against humanity, it's not just an order. So they can decide to do better, to make a choice. So, and I would like to let me use this example because possibly it is not so much diffused outside Italy. And this is the reference to the group of Italian soldiers that refuse to execute and to stand up on the side of the Republic of Salò in the north of Italy in 1943. So they were member of the army, the Italian army, but after the armistice of 8 September, they decided to say, okay, I cannot fight against my people. So they refused to execute the order, and because of that, they were deported with the support of the fascist party and the Nazi party occupying the north of Italy at that time with the name of the Republic of Salò, and they were tortured and submitted to horrible crimes because they refused to execute military orders. So this is also, let me use that little space just to make a reference to the forgotten people of Italy had the courage to stand up against injustice during the Second World War. So, and use this example to say that you don't, it's a risk, but you are not obliged to execute an immoral order. That's the point. So,
I think that there was another testimony in the Milosevic trial about a whole platoon that said, we're not going to do this. We know these guys, you know, they may be Bosniaks, but we've gone to school with them, you know, whatever. And they put their guns down and they walked home. And I remember his commanding officer said, you're wearing our clothes and things like that. And the guy said, okay. He takes off the uniform and they go home. Another one took a tank and he drove it up to the Capitol, you know, and drove up the steps, you know, those kinds of things really need to be publicized because I think they're not very much. And there are very brave, and you know, they were lucky in Serbia. They didn't get killed. They could have gotten shot for that in most countries.
Yeah, that's important to mention that. Thank you very much, because we are also we just passed the anniversary of the Srebrenica genocide. So very recently. So this is really to underline. And we use this platform also to, because as we said since the start of that amplificator of the voice of prisoners in Iran, they are an example of fight against oppression for everyone. They are not fighting for freedom. We used to say injustice somewhere is injustice everywhere, but the fight for freedom somewhere is the fight for freedom everywhere. That's the point. So, and that's what are they doing? And you see how many connections there are, and the example can be useful for other situations. So before to conclude, because I don't want to abuse of your time, I want to say just two things. The first one, sorry. The first one is thank you very much, because I think that at my our fifth episode of the podcast, I didn't say until now that in the negative and obscure time like that, there is also positive things. And from my point of view, the point to join force with leading experts like you and the other guests that we had the privilege to have until now. But it is also, let me say that, a personal privilege because I'm a learner, a continuing learner. So this opportunity to me, it's a personal opportunity to progress, not to growth, to progress, learning from the best like you and the past guests. So thank you also for that. And the second point is, before to concluding, I would like to ask you, as we used to do, a direct message to people of Iran in prison to support them, please.
Absolutely. And I have a blog, and I'm going to go write something on my blog too about it. But I'm honored to be asked to participate in this. What is happening in Iran's prisons and with the people who are supporting them is astonishing. It's the most courageous thing I've seen, and any way that I can support that, I just feel for them, and seeing what's happened and how many people are being executed is heartbreaking and outrageous. Iran has a history, a beautiful history that it's wiping out. People don't know about its history, and the people who are running Iran are destroying it. They're certainly besmirching it. I so admire the Persians, the people of Iran, and what you're doing, and the courage is beyond words. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you very much. It's our privilege. So before to conclude, let me just to send a few words this week to people of Iran, and to say them that despite the crisis, maybe I don't used to use my personal experience, but and it's impossible to compare. It's impossible even just to compare. But the oppressor is always is always trying to do his best to mute people when people stand up, like you are doing. So what is not normal for the oppressor is that the more force he is using, the more courage is seen. So this is our best arm we have. Stand up. So thank you very much to be with us also this Tuesday, and see you next week.
Yes, thank you.